So how did this talking parrot actually solve a murder? Now, the story starts with this woman. Her name's Glenna. And Glenna is around 36 when all this begins, and she's living in Michigan. But here's the thing about Glenna. She really loves gambling, and she'll do it all day if she could. The problem is, she doesn't make a lot of money. Her husband gets disability checks because of his disability, and Glenna gets paid by the state to be his professional caretaker. So they don't make much. However, Glenna still really loves to gamble. And she loves going to the local casino, she loves buying lottery tickets and playing the lottery. And over time, this turns into a really bad habit. I mean, she's buying lottery tickets constantly. And she'll spend about $100 a day on tickets, and she'll do that 3 or 4 times a week. And she also starts hitting up local casinos a lot. And this goes on for years. And by 2010, her gambling habit is out of control. In 1 year alone, she gambles away about $75,000 just at the casinos, which is most of her and her husband's income. So now she's running out of money, and she needs more to keep up her gambling habit. So she comes up with a scheme to make some. Since Glenna is the one in charge of the finances in the house, she starts using that to her advantage, and she starts taking money that's actually meant for important things, like taxes. She'll take that money and use it to gamble. And when that's not enough, she starts taking the money that's supposed to pay the car and mortgage payments, and she'll use that to gamble. And the worst part is her husband doesn't know any of this is going on. Now, her husband is this guy, Marty. Marty is disabled. He was involved in a car accident a few years before that had left the left side of his body paralyzed. So Marty knows that Glenna goes to the casinos, but he has no idea the amount of money she's spending there. Because if he did, he would likely freak the hell out. See, Marty is way better with money than she is. I mean, he's much more careful. Like, he's always turning off the lights at home and keeping the heater low. Meanwhile, Glenna's out here blowing all their money on slot machines or whatever. And years go by, and it's now 2015. And Glenna is still out here gambling all their money away. But by this point, all those unpaid bills have started catching up with her, and she sinks deeper and deeper into debt. So by now, she and Marty owe money to the IRS, and a collections agency is also trying to repo their car, and worst of all, their house is about to be foreclosed on. But at this point, there really isn't much Glenna can do to help her situation. I mean, she hasn't paid their mortgage for almost a year, and they owe about $48,000. But she doesn't have $48,000. I mean, if she did, she'd probably go gamble it. So eventually, the bank moves to foreclose on the house, and they send Glenna foreclosure papers. And of course, Glenna just ignores them. Like, she doesn't have the money to pay this, so she doesn't. So the bank places a legal notice in the local newspaper announcing that Glenna and Marty's house is about to be foreclosed on, which the bank is required to do by law. Then Marty's mom sees the notice, and she's like, wait, isn't that my son Marty's address? So she goes and she talks to Marty. And Marty, he has no idea that his house is about to get foreclosed on. So then he goes and he confronts Glenna, like, what the hell is all this? And Glenna lies to him. She says, oh, it's all just a misunderstanding. I'll call the bank and fix it. But she doesn't call the bank and fix it because it can't be fixed, not without paying the money that she owes them. Now, here's where the story gets really dark. Glenna, she knows it's only a matter of time before everything is exposed. Her debts, her foreclosure, the gambling problems, all of it. And when that happens, her house will probably be auctioned off and they'll get kicked out and they could end up homeless. And Glenna isn't about to let that happen. So she comes up with a diabolical plan. She feels the best way out of this mess is for her and Marty to die. Because that way, everything ends. Marty never finds out, and she never has to face the consequences. So she gets to work on this plan, and she writes 3 notes, one to her adult children, one to her mom, and one to her ex-husband, talking about how she's gonna unalive herself and that she's super sorry for letting them down. And once that's done, she gets a gun that they own, and then she goes into the bedroom where Marty is. And then she and Marty start fighting about something, and they're shouting and they're screaming at each other. And at one point, she yells at him like, "Get your ass over here!" And then, blam, 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 blam. She shoots Marty 5 times. And unfortunately, he doesn't survive. Then Glenna goes to the living room, and blam, she unalives herself. Now, here's what's crazy. Somehow, Glenna doesn't actually die. I mean, she obviously has a head wound, but she's not dead. So, for whatever reason, she then hides the gun under the couch, and then she drags herself back up to the bedroom, and she lies down right next to Marty. 2 days later, a neighbor who's close friends with Glenna and Marty, she starts to get worried. I mean, she hasn't heard from them in a few days. So she goes over to their house and she checks on them, and there she finds Glenna and Marty in the bedroom. Now, eventually, police are on the scene and they're investigating this whole situation, and they think this was a double homicide and that Glenna is actually dead, until she suddenly just jerks herself awake and opens her eyes and probably freaks everyone out. And so they rush her to the hospital for treatment. Later, police question Glenna and they ask her what happened, and she says she doesn't remember anything. And police, they don't have enough evidence to charge her with anything, so it's starting to look like Glenna is gonna get away with murder. Until something insane happens. See, Marty has this pet parrot named Bud. And after Marty's death, Bud is put in the care of his ex-wife. And because Bud was actually in the house during the incident, he legitimately witnessed the whole murder go down. So weeks later, Bud starts mimicking what he heard that day. He mimics Glenna yelling at Marty.
Get your over now!
And so Marty's ex-wife realizes that this bird is reenacting the killing verbally. But unfortunately, you can't really use something like this as evidence in court. And about a year goes by, and police still haven't arrested anyone over this murder, and Marty's family is still feeling super frustrated because they feel like it's clear that Glenna did this. So they go and they release this tape of Bud reenacting Marty's last moments to the local news to try and spark public interest and maybe get the case back on police's radar. And when the news picks this story up, it blows the fuck up and it goes viral, and news outlets around the world start talking about it, and everyone is suddenly interested in Bud and what he has to say. So now the police are starting to feel the pressure. So now they suddenly want to get back on this case. And within 3 weeks, they find enough information to make an arrest finally. And so, bam, they arrest Glenna. Here's her mugshot. And eventually, she goes to trial, and she's found guilty, and she gets sentenced to life